Well, could there be a better test of a sporting fan's priorities? We've got the Olympics rolling on in Tokyo on one end. We've got the 100 seemingly overshadowing what is the start of a big test series in England. But for the purists, for the cricket fans, there will always be a special place for test cricket, especially when it comes in the form of two of the best teams in the world facing off in five test matches. We don't get five test series anymore in cricket as much, so it should make for a wonderful cricketing contest between India and England, where, funny enough, India seem to be the team that have the edge over England, even though this is away in England. This is ESPN Cricket for Match Day. I'm Rana Kapoor, and we will build up and look ahead to the first test at Nottingham with Stephen Harmison and VVS Laxman. It's a very good afternoon, Laxman. Good morning to Steve, and let's start with you, VVS. There's something special about the start of a big test series in England, isn't there?
Absolutely. I always enjoy playing cricket in England. It's got a great atmosphere there, and all the fans come to the ground, encourage both their home team and the opposition visiting team. And overall, just the conditions there, the challenge for any overseas team to come there and win the series. I think it's a wonderful place to play test match cricket, and not very often you play five test match series. So I think this is a great opportunity for this Indian team to showcase their talent and play to their potential and hopefully win the series after 14 years.
Yes, that is what VVS Laxman said in our preview to this as well. He backs India to be favourites in this series. Now, Laxman and me, Steve, will be the kind of people that will be looking forward to a test series in England. But is England looking forward to this test series as much? We can't help but appreciate that the 100 has obviously been given a lot of airtime, a lot of attention's gone to the 100. Trent Bridge itself, I believe, it didn't look like there's going to be a test match here in a few days back. Let me ask you first how excited you are for this test series, and at the same time, what about the England players?
Yeah, I think they are excited to get going, the England Test boys. I think especially Broad and Anderson, who have not had any part of the 100, and they've been kept to one side a little bit. The 100 has dominated. I'm not going to lie, in England, and the ECB have invested a lot of money into trying to promote this new competition. But when I look at it, there's only one form of the game. The purist loves Test match cricket. Not a bigger series than England versus India. And up until about 10 days ago, I think it was all about the 100. But when, unfortunately, England fans got the news that Ben Stokes, for personal reasons, was not going to be involved in this series, taking a leave for an indefinite period, and how long that will be, we're not quite sure of. I think then that's when England versus India really came to the fore, and who was going to replace Ben Stokes. And it's going to be very, very intriguing to see what happens over the course of the next five days, because I think both sides have got similar problems at the top of the order that both bowling attacks would love to exploit.
Yep. Now, you said in our preview to this series, Laxman, that you think India go in as favourites. I don't know if we've ever said that going into a series. There was a lot of expectation in 2018 too. But is this India's best chance, you think, with all that's wrong with the England team, perhaps some players out of form, questions about their batting, etc., etc.? India have been in England for a while. Is this their best chance to win a series?
Yeah, this is a wonderful opportunity. There's no doubt about it. And whenever we predict the result of a series, or whenever we answer the question, who start as favorites, you basically think about the squad strength of both the sides. And when you see and compare both the sides, the kind of experience, the kind of talent, and the kind of potential the Indian team has, and the versatility they have in all the three departments, whether batting, fast bowling department, or spin bowling department, I think they're well ahead of the English team. The English team overly depend on a couple of batsmen. The captain Joe Root and Joss Butler will probably bat at number 6. And in the bowling department, while they will really be excited to see Broad and Anderson again playing together, but in the absence of Oakes, in the absence of Jofra Archer, and there's no main spin bowler who can pose threat to the Indian batting lineup. So when you compare both the sides, I think just with the sheer quality and class this Indian team possess, they start as favourites to me.
I'd love to talk about batting from both of you, or both sets of batters perhaps, because it's a curious sort of series in a way, Steve, where India's batters seem to have had more red ball action going into this series than England's batters. A lot of those frontline batters haven't had a red ball hit since the New Zealand series. People like Joss Butler haven't had a red ball hit since they were in India in February earlier this year. How much of this is going to be a challenge? Is it okay because they've still been playing the 100, they've still been in some kind of hitting form, or is this suddenly a new territory for England batters, but they've not had as much red ball cricket going into a major series at all?
Yeah, that'd be a concern for me that England, some of England's players, I can think of two or three that haven't played a red ball game since the winter. But I think a lot of these players are experienced enough now that the cross formats do come more frequent, so their ability to change their skill sets is a little bit easier. The replacement of Ben Stokes. Look,
Hmm.
whenever you get asked the question, who's going to replace Ben Stokes? The answer is simple: nobody. Nobody
Hmm.
replaces Ben Stokes. He is a ridiculous cricketer with both bat and ball and in the field, in the dressing room, character, opposition look at him. That is a huge blow for England. But when I look at the top of the England order, I think it'll be all down to who fires. If this series is in India, I say England have got no chance at all because the bowler's going against the batsman. But with it being in England, I just think the ball will move that little bit more, and it's a good place for England to start. This is a very, very good ground for England to play the first Test match. And VVS, you know more than anybody as a batsman. If you don't get off to a good start in a series, and you mentioned before a 5-match series, if it's a 5-match series and you have a couple of low scores in the first Test match, bowler gets on top of you. All of a sudden, there's pressure on. And I think that's why it's good for England to start at Trent Bridge, because it's Broad's home ground. The ball swings at Trent Bridge. We will see the ball move laterally through the air throughout this five days of Trent Bridge. So that brings England back into play, especially when it comes to the top order. And I think it just makes the contest that little bit closer than it would be if it was played out in India.
Lakshman, you go with that? It's a big first. The choice of the first test also is a significant factor in a long test series.
Yeah, I understand that, and I totally agree with what Steve has mentioned. And that's the beauty of 5 Test match series, because if it's a 2 Test match or 3 Test match, then usually, you don't really have a chance to come back. Where when you're playing a 5 Test match series, then you always have a chance to bounce back. And that's why India also will be mindful that they cannot take any side lightly, and that will be the attitude of Virat Kohli and the entire Indian team, because they want to go out and execute their game plans. They're not really thinking about the outcome. And if they focus on the processes and execute their game plan and play to their potential, they know the desired result will be on their side. But batting well in the first innings will be very, very critical. And winning that first session in the first test of a test series will set the tone. So today's first session, whether you're batting or bowling, will be very critical for both the sides. If England gets off to a good start, then suddenly there will be a little bit of confidence coming back into that England dressing room, especially with a lot of youngsters who have got the potential but not yet expressed themselves or established themselves at international arena. So the first session will actually set the tone for the entire test series.
Yeah, I mean, our complaint often when India tour England and Australia, Lakshman's been the lack of warm-up games, lack of practice games.
Yeah.
That's no longer an excuse this time, or is that still not ideal preparation given COVID times and whatnot? We have seen the World Test Championship, which would have helped to some degree, and you've now had a couple of warm-up games going into this. So is that now something that pushes India significantly in front?
I think, Raunak, we've talked extensively about that warm-up game, but with my experience since 2007, whenever we went to any overseas tours, the kind of opposition we play in a warm-up game has never been the same what we got before 2007. So the quality of the opposition really matters. But what is important is the amount of days, the number of days the Indian team has already been in England. So when you have good quality net session, which is highly intense, you have good intra-squad match, you have match simulation planned by the team management, and just about spending time before the first test in the place where you're going to play the test series is very, very critical. So not so much about the warm-up games, but it's more about spending time and getting used to the conditions, getting used to the environment, the weather will make a huge difference. And this time India has been there for more than 1 month, and I think it will be definitely in India's favor as far as preparation is concerned.
All right. Well, what doesn't go in India's favor, and Virat Kohli probably have a chuckle about it, is his luck with the tosses, because the first test of this series, the toss go down. England are going to have a bat first. Now, Steve, the venue was going to be important. How important is the toss as well for a team that seems to have a little more out of place than India, that they won the toss, they're going to have a bat first? Your thoughts?
Yeah, it's a good toss to win. I think it is a good toss to win. And VVS mentioned a bit earlier about getting first innings runs on the board. If you get first innings runs on the board, 400, 450 plus, all of a sudden you can control the game as a captain. You can have extra fielders in catching positions. You can crowd the batsmen. You can take a risk a little bit early. But if you don't get a top innings run, that top order runs like England have had over the course of the last 18 months, 2 years, then all of a sudden as a captain, you're always chasing your tail. You worry about having a third slip as opposed to extra cover for the swinging ball, Jimmy Anderson trying to drag the batsman forward and wanting it to move because you haven't got the value of them runs to play with. So toss is crucial. England are getting off to a good start. They now have to make the toss is only as good when you win it if you put runs on the board. If you don't put runs on the board, you might as well have lost the toss and bowl first on an absolute belter because you'll be chasing your tail. So it's going to be interesting to see how India's bowlers come out, because one thing I will say about the World Test Championship, he looked a bit rusty. I thought the Indian bowlers looked as though they hadn't spent time in the country.
Yeah.
So fingers crossed they've had a bit of time to acclimatise. They've been up in Durham, my neck of the woods. I'm sat in glorious sunshine at the minute, but it's not a bad place to come to acclimatise to England, because when you come to Durham, it's as cold as you'll ever get in the country. So everywhere else you go will feel a hell of a lot warmer and a little bit more homely, the temperature, than what it is normally at Durham. So I think India are prepared well up in the northeast. And hopefully, from an Indian point of view, their bowlers will have acclimatised more than what they had against New Zealand in the World Test Championship. So I thought a few of them looked a little bit off colour. My worry for India would be team selection. Can they get their team right 5 Test matches? Because from an outsider looking in, I just look at it and think sometimes India shoot themselves in the foot by team selection. And that would be my only concern if I was an India fan.
I tell you what, we've had that conversation, on and on and on. On almost every tour, selection becomes the biggest talking point. I don't know if it makes Virat Kohli's life harder that he's got more players to choose from in these times where they're sending 25, 30 in COVID situations. But there are some very interesting selection calls that India have made. I will come to that in a bit when we confirm the news. But just to get a quick reaction to what Joe Root's assessment of the surface is, Steve, since you do know him, he says, looks a reasonable wicket, not the prettiest. Now, what do you mean? What do you make of that?
I've been on these sort of surfaces before at Trent Bridge, and they don't look the best, but they play reasonably well. I can't see them in England preparing surfaces that will be dry and spin because of obviously Ashwin and Jadeja. England have gone in with 4 out-and-out seam bowlers. They haven't gone with an out-and-out quick. So there's no Mark Wood. They haven't gone. Jofra Archer's injured. We mentioned before, Wokes is not fit. Stone's not fit. So England are going to have to be smart in this next 5 Test matches when they use their fast man in Mark Wood on a flatter sort of surface. They've gone in without Jack Leach as a spinner. I don't think Joe Root believes that Jack Leach can do a good enough job to win a game for him. So we've gone for an extra batsman. England have gone for an extra batsman. So Bairstow bats 5, Lawrence bats 6, Butler at 7, Sam Curran, swing bowler at 8. And the swing will come into it because England have played 2 swing bowlers in Curran and Anderson, and they're playing 2 seam-ish bowlers that can swing it, but hit the seam a little bit more, and Robinson and Stuart Broad. It's a different team than I thought it was going to be, because I thought they might have just picked one less batsman and played the spinner, but England don't believe that this surface is going to spin and it's going to swing, and that for me will be question marks in the India dressing room on what their team selection is going to be.
Yeah, let's get into that. Steve summed up the England team really well, and it's very batting heavy. We'll come back to that in a moment. But India have made some very curious selection calls. Now, KL Rahul opening is something that we did foresee. Laxman, you went towards that as well. That is confirmed now. Rahul will open, but Jadeja plays as the sole spinner, and R. Ashwin misses out. Let me start with that first up. Jadeja is the first spinner. What are your thoughts on that?
I always felt that Ravichandran Ashwin is a very skillful bowler, and what we have seen recently is his overseas performances are also brilliant. And he's done really well, especially when India beat Australia. The way he got rid of Steve Smith consistently shows how confident he is in performing in overseas condition. But I think when I see the squad here, they've gone with Shardul Thakur, probably as a medium pace option and who can also probably provide some kind of depth in the batting department. But for me,
Yes.
if you're picking a bowler who is going to bat at number 8, I would always go for a bowler who actually can give me match-winning performances with the ball. And for me, that will be Ravichandran Ashwin. So I would have actually gone with the balance which the Indian team had in the World Test Championship final, where they had two spinners, Ravindra Jadeja as an all-rounder and Ravichandran Ashwin as the prominent spinner in the team, and then you got three quick bowlers. Because in the past, I played in a team where you had four fast bowlers, and invariably one of the fast bowler was under bowled. So I don't know why Virat Kohli and team management went with this combination. The only reasoning or logic I see is probably Shardul Thakur can also bat, and the way he bowled in Brisbane and also contributed with bat must have encouraged them to take the decision. But I just feel for Ravichandran Ashwin, he's a class bowler. You can't keep him out of the playing 11.
I mean, you think I'm with you on that, Laxman. And if you can extend on that point, you think Ashwin's come off his best tour of Australia. He bowled particularly well at home, which we expect him to against England. You think it's somewhere Ashwin's in a bit of a purple patch with the ball? Can you not look at Ashwin in isolation as a bowler and say, this guy just has to make my 11? Otherwise, you tend to complicate matters looking at who can bat and who can bowl. Isn't Ashwin good enough to make your 11 purely as your front line of spinner?
No, absolutely. And that's why I don't really give too much of value to someone who is batting at 8. How many runs or what will be his contribution with the bat be. I would be actually going with 4 top-class wicket-taking bowlers, and then at number 7, I'll have my all-rounder who can also chip in with either with the bat or with the ball. And for me, that all-rounder is Ravindra Jadeja. And Ravichandran Ashwin has shown over the last 2 years that he's not only a match winner, but he can take the wickets and put pressure on the best of batsmen. And we know Steve Smith is one of the best as far as playing spin bowling is concerned. And the way he troubles Steve Smith on placid, flat wickets shows that how much confidence he has got in his ability. And at the start of the series, the kind of form Ashwin showed in the World Test Championship final, I thought he bowled well, even in the second innings or in the first innings. And then in the lone county game he played for Surrey, he was amongst wickets. So you don't actually discard someone who is high in confidence and who, as you rightly mentioned, was going through a purple patch.
All right. Now, Steve, you made that point too. You've been following this Indian team and you are worried about the selection calls they make. They've decided to go with Jadeja over Ashwin. Just your thoughts on that.
I'm surprised. I'm really surprised. I must admit, I think the England cricket team might be, having a little, not a chuckle, but a little smile in the dressing room and thinking, we're happy with Ashwin not playing. Bear in mind, Ashwin got runs with the bat and he was unbelievable with the ball in India. Ashwin's got a ridiculous number of wickets in English conditions. He's played county cricket, got 6 for Surrey not long ago, having a run out in English first-class cricket. And again, we reiterate what I said before, India could beat themselves by not picking the right side. And as much as I've said about it, the surface not looking great and the not wanting it to spin, we're not talking about 2 part-time spin bowlers who are in their sort of infancy of their career. We're talking about 2 senior spin bowlers who have bowled a lot of overs in Test match cricket, who understand the game, who can control the game even if the ball's not turning, and still have a positive impact in the game. So for me, as an Englishman, I'm over the moon with this India team because I think Ravichandran Ashwin should be playing for India alongside Jadeja. It balances the side out well, doesn't give you anything less with the bat, and I think England will be relatively happy that Ashwin's not playing.
All right. Well, that tells you where VVS Laxman and Steve Harmison stand on this. I'm sure you will join in to the debate as well. And there'll be no end to this discussion. Ashwin left out of the first test is perhaps the big story from an Indian point of view. But as we confirm the other choices that are made, KL Rahul does open. Now, Laxman, I know this is something you wouldn't have minded, Rahul opening. But you do have an Abhimanyu Ishwaran in the side who's not played Test cricket. Rahul was initially dropped from the Test side, made his way back on the basis of white ball form. We've not had a lot of domestic red ball cricket. Is it the right call to make at the start of the series to give Rahul a go ahead of reserve opener that you took?
Yeah, absolutely. When we had the pre-series chat, Ronak, I clearly mentioned that even if Mayank Agarwal would have been 100% fit, I would have gone for KL Rahul as an opener to open alongside Rohit Sharma because I believe that he's a very talented batsman and his record is not only good in Indian conditions but even in overseas conditions. And yes, he went through a lean patch and that's why he was dropped. But since then, he made a comeback. He scored runs in the domestic cricket. He scored runs in white ball cricket. He has adapted to various roles given to him in white ball cricket as a wicketkeeper batsman or on top of the order or in the middle order. He played the role of a finisher. So only players who are quality, who have got quality and who've got the temperament to adjust to various situations and the roles designated to them can only perform so well. So I think KL Rahul is an automatic choice. Yes, Abhimanyu Ishwaran is a good young talented batsman, but the amount of experience and the class KL Rahul has, I mean, it's the right choice made by Virat Kohli. And I just feel that this series can be a very important series for KL Rahul because sometimes luck can be in your favor, and whenever you get an opportunity after waiting patiently for so long, you want to capitalize that as a batsman. And I think that's what KL Rahul will be eagerly waiting for to make use of this series and this opportunity.
Now, in terms of just perhaps striking a balance, and I'm sure it'll be hard, Lakshman, Rahul is always a tempting option whenever he's in your squad. If you put him in your squad, you just feel like playing him. It's one of those things that went in Rohit Sharma's favor too, and for KL Rahul. But on the other hand, the precedent you set, a domestic run getter, not for his fault, he hasn't had any domestic cricket. And you've got Rahul, who's not really got runs in red ball cricket at the top of the order, who again gets the opportunity before an Ishwaran. Do you somewhere feel it's unfair on an Abhimanyu Ishwaran or on the concept of picking a player who's not performed or leaving a player out who only plays red ball cricket?
Well, Abhimanyu Ishwaran also will understand that someone as experienced in KL Rahul will be much ahead of him as far as getting an opportunity if at all the need arises. And at the moment, he understands that it was the right call. But coming back to KL Rahul, I mentioned even before Raunak, is for me, KL Rahul has always been an out-and-out opener. So I was a little surprised when the team management asked him to bat in both the innings in that warm-up game against the combined county level in Durham in the middle order. And he got 100 in that match. So I think there has to be some clarity as to what position the team management and the selection committee have actually chosen for KL Rahul. Because in my mind, he's been chosen or he's been picked as opener. He was there in Australia as an opener, as a backup opener. He was there. He's there on this tour as a backup opener. So, I mean, to answer your question, he's well ahead of Abhimanyu Ishwaran as far as experience is concerned, and I think it's the right choice made by Virat Kohli.
Yep, fair enough. All right, we'll more on KL Rahul when he gets a bat, but that's going to be a while from now. England are going to have a bat first. Now, the choice of India's seamers. Again, an interesting conversation. We were wondering whether they'd play Ishan, Bumrah and Shami. Yes, they have. There was some concern around Ishan Sharma's fitness, but that's been okay, do you think, with his selection? Shardul Thakur plays. Now, Steve, it's an interesting choice of a fourth seamer. Mohammad Siraj was a tempting option too, but then the batting, like Laxman points out, comes into it. From what you saw in the World Test Championship, it did look like India's bowlers weren't quite up to the mark. They did live up to the expectations a lot of us had of them. What would you like to see them do now that they're bowling on the first morning at Trent Bridge?
They've got to. I think they've got to believe that the lengths they're going to bowl, in the bowling coach is going to reiterate. In England now, pitches are a little bit more docile. They're not the pitches of a few years ago where the ball bounces and it flies through. There's a lot of chief executive pitches, which I call chief executive pitches because they want them to go 5 days. They're very, very flat. But the thing you've got in English conditions is the overhead and getting the ball to move laterally when it's a little bit warmer, the clouds come over, and believe and back themselves to get that length that little bit fuller. And I think that's why England have picked the team they've picked, because Sam Curran will pitch the ball up, Jimmy Anderson will pitch the ball up, Stuart Broad plays at home. He knows the lengths to bowl at Trent Bridge. And I think the challenge for the likes of Bumrah, who is more of a hit the deck bowler, whose length would be a little bit shorter, probably around about my length there, that little bit back of the length, that little bit shorter, but really sort of believe that fuller length is the length you've got to go to. And I think that is the challenge for the Indian bowlers. Can you get it up there? Can you make the ball swing? Believe that you entice the batsman to drive, And if he does drive you and it goes through extra cover, because you've got no extra cover and you've got third slip, that you don't sort of revert back to type, which is going back to length. If the ball's moving, get the ball up there, give it a chance to swing, and hope that the batsman's technique is not always with it, because I think both top orders are there to be had if you can put the ball in the right area, especially with a brand new Duke ball.
Yeah, Laxman, thoughts on India's bowlers? We keep talking about batters needing time in England. It looked like after that World Test Championship that the bowlers needed some time in England too. Length's the key in this first session.
Yeah, not only in England, any overseas tour. I think it's also important that the bowlers get the right length. And the more they bowl and the more they understand what is the right length, keeping in mind the conditions they're going to play on, the more effective they can be. And that was the only difference why Jasprit Bumrah was not able to pick up wickets or put pressure on the New Zealand batsmen. Because when you see the pitch map of the New Zealand fast bowlers compared to Jasprit Bumrah's, he was more good length or back of good length. That will be a more defensive kind of bowlers, bowling line or length. But in England, to pick up wickets, the fuller you bowl, the more opportunity you get to swing the ball. And Duke's ball is something which I'm sure every fast bowler will relish to bowl with. So I think change in the length will be very critical. And the amount of time they've spent now in Durham or preparing for this test match, I'm sure that's something which Bharat Arun would have emphasized to all the fast bowlers. Yes, you can go back to your natural length, but to pick up wickets and to be effective in English conditions, the fuller you bowl, the more wickets and more purchase you'll get from the pitch. Classical example will be Ishant Sharma. You see, since last 3 years, the amount of wickets Ishant Sharma has taken in international cricket compared to his career before that is purely because he started bowling much fuller than what he used to do before.
All right. Now, as far as the choice of Indian bowlers go as well, it could have been a toss-up between Shardul and Siraj if Virat Kohli decided he's not going to play both spinners. Let's just talk about the bowlers themselves. We know why Shardul gets the edge because of his batting, Lakshman. But from what you've seen of Shardul Thakur, does he seem like the more potent bowling option in these conditions in England than, say, Mohammad Siraj would have been?
Oh no, if you compare both the bowlers, I would any day back Mohammad Siraj, because he's much quicker, he's much more effective, and he can bowl long spells. And the kind of effectiveness you want from a bowler in English conditions, I think that's something which you can get from Mohammad Siraj. The only reason Siraj missed out and Shardul Thakur got the nod from the team management is because of his batting, and that's why at number 8. I would always go for a bowler who can create an impact in the match. And then if he gives extra runs, that is an added bonus. We're not talking about 50-over cricket. We're not talking about 20-over cricket. We're talking about test match cricket. And to win test matches and to win test series, you require to consistently take 20 wickets. So having those wicket-taking bowlers, potent bowlers who can put pressure, even though the conditions are in favor of the batsman, is very, very critical.
Now, at this point, I'm just confirming the team. I believe there was some miscommunication to the broadcasters originally, and there has been a different team from what we originally understood. Siraj actually plays, and it is for Ishant Sharma. So there's no Ishant Sharma, and Siraj, along with Shardul Thakur, play. So we stand corrected. I believe that was the first thing that went up on the broadcast on both England and India networks, and then it's been corrected in time. But all right, so no Ishant Sharma, and Siraj and Shardul play. So let's restart this conversation. Luckily, we were only one question into it. Let's go to VVS Laxman first. Siraj and Shardul both play. Now, how does that make this bowling lineup look for you, VVS?
Yeah, I think, I would still have Ravichandran Ashwin to play instead of Shardul Thakur and bat at number 8. Ravichandran Ashwin has got 5 test hundreds and is batting really well. He almost rediscovered his batting potential. In the recent series against England, we saw, even though it was in Indian conditions, but under pressure, the way he batted, we saw what he did in achieving the draw against Australia in Sydney. So he's got enough batting talent as well. And Siraj is an automatic replacement for Ishant Sharma. We've been hearing that he's been struggling with his ankle and had some injury concern. And you don't want an experienced bowler like Ishant Sharma to aggravate that injury at the start of the series. So that's the right call. It's a like-to-like replacement for Ishant Sharma, and it's a great opportunity for Mohammad Siraj. But I would have still gone with Ravichandran Ashwin in place of Shardul Thakur.
Yeah, fair point. Ashwin gets the vote on this panel for sure. It seems to get the vote everywhere except where it matters, for poor R. Ashwin. But let's talk about the choice of Mohammad Siraj. Steve, I don't know how much you've seen of him, but he does look like an exciting prospect, bowled well in Australia on his debut tour, and he does seem to bring something different from what Ishant Sharma would. Now, how does that bowling lineup look to you? Inexperienced as it may be, does it look like some lineup that can take 20 wickets?
Yeah, I like Siraj. I really do. I thought Siraj in England is a must. I really do, and I think he'll do well in English conditions. Just a little bit what I was saying before, that
Yeah.
bowling that little bit fuller length and getting the ball to move, he gets the ball to move away from the right-handed batsman from a fuller length. I think is valuable in English conditions, especially with the Duke ball. The difference between the Duke ball and the Kookaburra for a swing bowler like Siraj is huge because by the time Siraj is going to get the ball, if it was with a Kookaburra, all of a sudden, 10 overs, 12 overs in, ball doesn't swing as much. If you look after the Duke ball, and I'm sure India have worked so hard, bowling coach will have been telling them how much that this Duke ball is such a great friend of yours. If you shine it properly, if you look after it, if you make sure that your fielders aren't getting the sort of sweaty hands on it, or it's getting thrown into the ground. This thing could swing for the best part of 40 overs. Now, yeah, you can. That's why Broad and Anderson have been so good because they're not under so much pressure to get the wicket every ball because the ball is their friend. Is in friendly condition for them for maybe 10 overs. So Siraj for me was a must for India because especially at Trent Bridge because he pitches it up, he gives it a chance to swing. I like the kid's ticker. I really like his heart. I think there's something in there where he makes something happen. He's got a great body language. He looks to get into the batsman's face, into their space, and I think he looks as though he's a competitor for what I've seen of him in the IPL. So I think it's a good selection for India. Yes, I think Ishant Sharma's experience would help, but I think Shami, Siraj, and Bumrah is a very, very well balanced seam attack for England at Trent Bridge. And again, I'll back up what VVS is saying. I can't believe India haven't played R. Ashwin to go
Yeah.
with Ravi Jadeja.
I mean, it tells you something, right? Even if we are discussing the seamers, we can't isolate the point that Ashwin should have played. It's almost one of those things. Like, how can we not play Ashwin? Well, Virat Kohli surprises us every now and then, so we will see if this is a surprise that turns out to be a pleasant one for India and they still can get the job done, or if it doesn't. There'll be a contest to who wants to take the new ball now, Laxman, with Ishant Sharma gone. Does Siraj get it straight away? You want him to perhaps take the new ball, or will it be Shami and Bumrah, the more experienced teamers that start?
No, I would go with Mohammad Siraj, because
Yeah.
I think he's got the ideal bowling approach to put pressure on the opening batsman, because you don't want to waste the new ball. And we also know that both the openers at the start of the series, first innings of a test series will be tentative. So the fuller you bowl the ball, the more accurate you are and more penetrative you are, you're bound to get those early dismissals, which is so important from India's point of view. So I think it will be Siraj along with Jasprit Bumrah and probably Mohammad Shami, who was probably the most impressive bowler in that World Test Championship final, will be coming one change. And it will be interesting to see how and when Virat Kohli will use Shardul Thakur, because
Yeah.
with three quality bowlers and all three of them have got the ability to bowl long spells, you don't want one of them to be underbowled in this innings.
All right. We haven't perhaps given enough justice to the England 11, and we'll just come back to that chat now as the anthems take place at Trent Bridge. The choice of leaving Jack Leach out, yes, we've touched upon it, that perhaps there's not as much confidence on a Jack Leach against an Indian side in England. But Steve, if you look at that team, it's batting heavy. Now, what's the downside to having a batting heavy side? Yes, there's Broad Anderson, there's Sam Curran, but what's the biggest downside to having a side that's so heavy on batting?
The downside is you've lost the spin bowling option potentially for day 4, day 5 if it comes to that. Got to remember we're playing against India, so their ability to play spin is out of this world. So you probably want to go with your seamers. I'll heavily pack the seam option. Trent Bridge will swing, so we've gone for 2 out-and-out swing bowlers and brought in Anderson and Curran. But this whole factor, going top heavy with the batting, is largely down to Ben Stokes being the omission of Ben Stokes. Not having a great all-rounder is is a huge loss for us, and not only because we want Ben, and I'm sure I speak for everybody in India because he's got a huge following in India. We want Ben to be physically and mentally okay and right to come back into the great game we love. We love Ben to be playing in this series because it's an iconic series, but not having him, I was fortunate to play with Andrew Flintoff, the generation before, and Surrey and Botham. And the balance that these two guys, or the all-rounder, gives is ridiculous, and that's why Jack Leach has been omitted. So I think England are strong. I think they've gone bat and heavy because we worry about our top three. I'm pleased to see the experience of Bairstow in the middle order, and he has a little bit of a fear factor because of what he's done of IPL, but he hasn't really done it in Test match cricket recently. Neither has Josh Buttler. I think it's a big 5 Test matches for Josh Buttler because he needs to perform and stand up and be counted with no Ben Stokes in this series.
Is it the kind of team that you're just a little bit happier picking if you win the toss and bat first, Steve?
Oh, it's a great team to bat first. Great team to win the toss and bat first, and get runs on the board.
Yeah.
And it comes back to it's only a good toss. And VVS, you know yourself, having possibly captained many sides, that your toss is only as good if your top order scores runs. And if the top order get 200, or if the England only get 200, the toss is a waste of time. If they can get 450 as a captain, it's a great toss to win because you can control the game with your bowlers, your field, and put pressure, scoreboard pressure. I think in Test match cricket now, it's as big factor in ever it's been in international Test match cricket.
All right. Let's get deeper into this conversation at lunch. Gentlemen, thank you very much. VVS Laxman, Stephen Harmison. We will chat more at the end of the first session of this wonderful series that's already given us so much to talk about. That tends to happen with Test match cricket. It particularly tends to happen when India play Test match cricket. So we'll have more to discuss at lunchtime on the first day. Join us then on ESPN Cricket for Match Day.